A 23-year-old driver wrecks more cars than almost anyone in the entire garage, and fans worship him for it. A teenager who has barely done anything wrong is getting destroyed by the exact same fans, race after race. Something about that doesn't add up, and by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why. But here is the part nobody is talking about. The man who exposed this entire double standard is not a fan, not a reporter, not some anonymous voice online. He is a three-time champion who lived through this exact nightmare himself 16 years ago, and what he admitted on national radio with the microphone hot is something he has never said quite this clearly before. Stay with me, because by the middle of this video, you will hear him say a sentence about his own career that most drivers would never dare say out loud. Before we go further, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what unfolds over the next 30 minutes is going to change the way you look at every young driver climbing through this sport. Somewhere inside a NASCAR broadcast booth, a three-time champion said something he has clearly been sitting on for years. He did not plan to say it. It just came out. And once it came out, it split the entire fan base straight down the middle. Keep that image in your head as we go, because everything in this story circles back to that one unscripted moment. The setting was simple enough. Kevin Harvick was out for the week, so Joey Logano slid into his seat to co-host Happy Hour. And like almost every NASCAR conversation this season, the talk turned toward the sport's newest young drivers. Two names kept coming up, over and over. And the strange part is that these two names represent two completely opposite fates. The first name is Connor Zilisch, 19 years old, wrapped in hype since before he ever sat in a Cup car, and right now, living through one of the harshest rookie seasons anyone can remember. The second name is Carson Hocevar, 23 years old, driving for Spire Motorsports, wrecking more cars than almost anyone in the garage, and somehow, fans cannot get enough of him. Joey Logano looked at both of these young men and asked a question live on the air that he clearly could not hold in any longer. How does this happen? What am I missing? And before we go any further, keep one detail in the back of your mind. Just days after this podcast aired, one of these two drivers was involved in yet another brutal wreck, an incident that made this entire conversation look almost like it predicted the future. We will get to exactly what happened later in this video, so do not go anywhere. Let's start with the rookie who is doing almost everything right and still getting buried for it. Connor Zilisch arrived in the Cup Series carrying the label of the next big thing. He built his name through an open-wheel style path, generated massive hype racing for JR Motorsports on his way up, and very nearly won the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series championship the year before making the jump. Fans online have compared the way he carries himself to a young Jeff Gordon, another teenager who came in loaded with speed and expectation and had to prove it all over again at the top level. The rookie reality has been brutal. Zilisch is blazing fast in practice and in qualifying, but he has not been able to string together a clean, full race to bank the result his speed deserves. In San Diego, he was running in the top 3, right where the hype said he should be, and then contact with Austin Hill ended his day with a did not finish. That result was not a one-off. It came inside a stretch that included multiple near-last-place finishes in a row, exactly the kind of run that gets a hyped young driver mocked by fans who expected instant results and got a string of disasters instead. Then, finally, something shifted. At Sonoma, Connor Zilisch drove to a 7th-place finish, the first top 10 result of his entire Cup career. Proof, at last, that the raw speed everyone kept talking about could actually translate into a finished, clean race. And this is the exact moment where Joey Logano stepped forward to defend him, live, on the air, without being asked twice. Logano called him a diamond in the rough. He said the talent is undeniably real. And then he said something that carried far more weight than a typical veteran platitude. In his own words, Logano said, "Connor will do it. Connor's an amazing talent. He's great, but a diamond in the rough at the moment. He just needs to be around long enough." And I think that's the big thing for young talent coming in these days, is they have to give them a chance. Here's why that quote hits differently coming from Joey Logano specifically. He is not speaking in the abstract. He almost lived this exact disaster himself, and he came within one phone call of never being a Cup Series driver at all. When Logano was driving for Joe Gibbs Racing as a teenager, the criticism against him was brutal, and he genuinely believed his career was finished before it had truly started. Then, in 2013, Team Penske stepped in and gave him a second chance that most drivers in his position never get. Thinking back on how close he came to disappearing from the sport entirely, Logano said something remarkably raw for a driver of his stature. "I almost lost my chance. I mean, I technically did until Team Penske gave me a second chance, but I was this close to not making it." Forget 3 championships, not making it, not driving race cars, and we need to give these younger guys a chance to keep up and catch up. Hold on to that quote, because later in this video, that same idea of second chances gets flipped completely on its head when we talk about the driver everyone actually blames. Logano was not the only established name defending the young rookie either. Kyle Larson, speaking separately to reporters at Sonoma, echoed almost the exact same sentiment. Larson pointed out that he himself was 19 years old racing at that same track once, and he expects this rookie to figure things out with more laps under him. Larson called him a good kid and predicted the second half of the season would be dramatically stronger, simply because the young driver would finally be seeing every track for a second time instead of walking in blind. Then Logano got specific about exactly why this jump breaks so many promising young drivers. His explanation was blunt, and honestly, a little shocking if you have never heard a Cup driver describe it this way. He said the leap from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series into the Cup Series is the single hardest jump in all of motorsport, full stop. In his words, the jump from the O'Reilly Series to the Cup Series is the largest jump in motorsports, period. Hands down, there's not a larger jump from talent level. Nothing against what's going on in the O'Reilly Series, but everybody in the Cup Series can go to the O'Reilly Series and win today. Every single one of them. To back that up, Logano told a story from his own rookie year that is honestly a little humbling. He remembered watching the drivers who consistently ran at the back of the field every single week and assuming, arrogantly, that he could easily pass all of them the moment he arrived. He was wrong, and he found out exactly how wrong almost immediately. They're all really freaking good. I learned that. I remember some of my first races, and I thought those guys that run in the back every week in the Cup Series, I'm like, I can beat that. And then I'm just watching them, just laying 2 black marks off the corner, just going burnouts off the corner. I'm like, holy cow, these guys are really good and I couldn't keep up. His conclusion was simple and, honestly, generous. It took him roughly 2 full years to reach the level the Cup Series demanded. So by his own logic, fans need to extend that exact same runway to Connor Zilisch before writing him off. Remember that detail I asked you to hold on to earlier? Here it is. Just days after this podcast aired, at Chicagoland, on lap 1, Connor Zilisch was caught in a chain reaction wreck that had nothing to do with his own driving. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got pinched by another car. The field bunched up behind him, and Zilisch's car took the brunt of it, towed to the garage with major damage before the race had barely started. Over his radio, all he could say was, "We're destroyed. I am sorry, guys. Oh my, can't get anything to go for me." It was the 5th incident involving his car in his last 7 races. So even as Logano was publicly asking fans for patience, the sport itself kept testing that patience almost immediately. Keep that pattern in mind, because it becomes very important again toward the end of this video. Now here's where the story takes a hard turn, and this is the part that actually blew up online. Carson Hocevar drives for Spire Motorsports, and by his own peers' admission, he is not exactly the most popular driver in the garage among the veterans he races against. And yet, despite that, or maybe even because of it, his popularity with fans is exploding in real time. He currently sits inside the top 10 in the championship points, standings, proof that the speed backing up the attitude is very real. Logano openly called him a future marketing face of the entire sport, someone actively pulling in brand new fans who have never followed NASCAR before, largely thanks to an internet-native, Twitch-streaming persona that gives him a direct line to a younger audience most drivers simply do not have. Here's the part where Logano and Kyle Larson agree completely, almost word for word. The raw talent is enormous. Nobody disputes that. But the maturity has not caught up to the talent yet, not even close. Logano described him as a wild card, a driver who will throw his car into any gap that opens up and simply accept whatever consequence comes next. I'd agree he's got a ridiculous amount of talent, like raw talent. He's just wicked fast. He added that this driver is willing to sling it into a gap and let the chips fall wherever they land, and that eventually that exact attitude is going to catch up with him in a way he won't be able to walk away from. There was a lighter moment buried in all of this too. Logano, now 35, admitted with a laugh that he genuinely does not understand half of what this 23-year-old says, especially the slang and the social media language that comes so naturally to him. I don't know what he's talking about half the time. I don't know what these words mean. But people love it, and there's no denying that. And that's great. That's great for our sport. But underneath that laugh was a warning that was completely serious. Logano admitted, almost confessionally, that his own aggressive approach as a young driver cost him more than fans probably realize, and he framed it as a lesson this rookie still has not learned yet. I've made the mistakes. I know this. I've cost myself, I think, at least a championship. Then he asked the question directly, as if speaking straight to the young driver himself. Do you want to win a one-off race here and there, or do you want to win championships? That decision, Logano said, is not made in one race. It gets decided across an entire season, one small choice at a time. And then, almost like the universe wanted to test this entire theory in real time, it happened. A live example, right there at Sonoma, that the whole sport argued about for days afterward. On lap 64, contact sent Denny Hamlin spinning, dropping him from 6th place all the way to the back of the field in seconds. The instant reaction from the broadcast, and from most fans watching at home, was to point straight at Carson Hocevar. Case closed, at least according to the internet. But here's the twist. The driver who actually got spun told a far more complicated version of events. Speaking on his own podcast afterward, Denny Hamlin called it a straightforward racing deal. He said the data from the wreck was too messy to pin the blame entirely on one driver, and he split the responsibility across 3 separate cars in what became a 4-car train of pushing and shoving where nobody wanted to lift off the bumper in front of them. He acknowledged the young driver probably could have handled it more cleanly, but he stopped well short of calling it reckless. In the end, I'm very comfortable in saying that that wreck was a racing deal. He went even further, saying that pinning the entire incident on a single driver would be, in his own words, grossly irresponsible. And here's the irony nobody expected. Despite finishing 26th after getting spun, Denny Hamlin actually moved into 1st place in the championship standings that same day, passing his own teammate by a single point. NASCAR analyst Steve Letarte went even further in defending the young driver everyone was so quick to blame. His theory was that the real culprit was not any single driver at all, but road course racing itself, a style of racing that naturally produces exactly these kinds of chaotic multi-car pileups. So, as much as the fan base wants to point the blame at someone, I think the blame really might go to road course racing in general. But then he added the line that explains everything about why this driver still takes the public heat regardless. When you hit the car in front of you, you get the speeding ticket, you get the infraction, and Carson Hocevar is going to get the ticket here. Hocevar himself gave his own account afterward to a reporter trackside. He explained that he got left exposed in the pack, caught in bumper car chaos, and was simply trying to protect his own car from getting spun the same way it had been the week before. He said he was watching his mirror so closely that he did not even realize contact had been made with Hamlin's car. He even joked, half serious, that given how much praise he had just given Hamlin afterward, people were probably going to accuse him of race fixing. Now sit with that for a second, because this is the entire point of the story. In a wreck where the driver who actually got spun, plus a respected veteran analyst, both publicly said this young driver was probably not truly at fault, he still got blamed instantly by fans within seconds of the crash happening. And veterans rushed to shield him from the backlash almost immediately. That is the complete opposite of how Joey Logano was treated at the exact same age, in the exact same sport, doing arguably less damage. And this was not some isolated case either. Hocevar's reputation for aggressive, unapologetic driving has been building for a while now. This is not the first time his name has trended after contact with another car, and it will almost certainly not be the last. Yet every single time, the online reaction follows the same script. A wave of outrage, lasting maybe a day, followed almost immediately by a wave of fans defending him just as loudly, arguing that this is exactly why they started watching NASCAR in the first place. Two completely opposite reactions happening at the exact same time over the exact same driver. That split reaction is honestly rare in sports, and it is a big part of why veterans like Logano cannot quite figure out how to respond to him. This is where Logano's real grievance comes out, and it is worth hearing in his own words because the frustration is impossible to miss. When Logano was 19 years old racing for Joe Gibbs Racing and getting tangled up with veterans, he was branded a villain almost overnight, a young punk who raced above his ability and got in everyone's way. And by his own account, the fans have genuinely never let it go. This kid comes in and wrecks way more people than I ever did, and people love him. How does this happen? What am I missing? He says he still gets booed to this day for things he did as a teenager more than 16 years ago. So what actually explains a gap this wide? A few theories are worth weighing here, and honestly, all of them probably play some part. The first is simply the era. Social media now turns raw personality into stardom in a way that flat out did not exist when Logano was coming up as a rookie. Back then, a young driver's reputation was built almost entirely through television broadcasts and post-race interviews controlled by networks. Today, a single clip of a driver being blunt, funny, or chaotic online can reach more people in one afternoon than an entire season of broadcast coverage used to. That alone changes how forgiving an audience is willing to be. The second theory is what younger fans might casually call aura, but in plainer terms, it is just marketing instinct. One driver leans hard into being a character, cracking jokes, talking trash, feeding the internet exactly the content it wants. The other one, at that same age, did not. He raced quietly, let his results speak, and got punished for it precisely because there was no personality attached to soften the criticism. The third theory is that fans genuinely crave a villain to root against, and this driver knowingly, almost gleefully, plays that exact role, whether he fully admits it or not. Every sport needs a heel. Wrestling figured this out decades ago. NASCAR fans, whether they'd say it out loud or not, seem to enjoy having someone to boo just as much as someone to cheer. And the fourth theory might be the sharpest one of all. Logano's actual mistake all those years ago may not have been the aggression itself, but who he picked fights with. Beloved veterans like Kevin Harvick. And when you pick a fight with the wrong beloved figure at the wrong moment, fans apparently never, ever forgive you for it, no matter how many championships you win afterward. It is also worth noting the tone Logano used while saying all of this. He delivered the entire grievance while laughing, which puts it somewhere between a genuine, years-old frustration and a half-joke he has clearly made peace with, at least on the surface. But there is a bigger lesson sitting underneath this whole story, and it connects everything back together in a way that's honestly kind of beautiful if you think about it. This same weekend, over at Chicagoland, Zane Smith made his 100th career Cup Series start. He credits two veterans specifically for shaping how he races today. From Denny Hamlin, he learned to live to fight another day instead of forcing a moment that isn't there. From Joey Logano, he learned how to grind out a race through small, smart decisions instead of one big, heroic move. Zane Smith described running around Logano lap after lap, only to finish 15th himself, while somehow looking up at the scoring pylon to see Logano sitting in 5th. His own words were something close to, "How did he even get up there?" And that right there is the thread that ties this entire story together. Even the champions, the veterans, the ones who eventually made it, needed years of getting it wrong before they figured it out. That is exactly the grace Logano argues Connor Zilisch deserves right now. And in his own complicated, half-laughing way, it is the same grace he ends up extending to Carson Hocevar too, even while warning him that the clock is ticking on that same forgiveness. Think about how strange this actually is when you step back from it. The same man complaining about being booed for 16 years is the exact same man publicly defending the driver, getting away with far more right now in real time. Logano is not bitter enough to stay silent, and he is not petty enough to let history repeat itself without saying something. That contradiction, arguing for patience while still nursing an old wound, is honestly the most human part of this entire story. So here is the real question this entire story leaves behind, and it is worth sitting with before you go anywhere. Is Carson Hocevar getting a pass that Joey Logano himself never received at the exact same age? Or did Joey Logano simply pick the wrong enemies at the wrong moment in his career and pay for that mistake for the next 16 years? And what happens to Connor Zilisch, the driver everyone agrees deserves patience, if the wrecks keep piling up before that patience ever gets the chance to pay off? Drop your answer in the comments, because this debate is nowhere near settled. And if you want to see exactly how this rivalry, this rookie season, and this entire double standard plays out over the rest of the year, make sure you are subscribed, because this story is far from over.